My name's Aubrey Mozino. I am the vice chair of the SAG-AFTRA NGP Next Gen Performers Committee, which all of you in here should be more involved in if you aren't already. We do events to basically connect members together and educate you about what the union does. So if you want to learn more, there's some cards out front. You can follow us on social media. And I also run a film community called We Make Movies, where we help people, actors, filmmakers, just get the resources and the education they need to make their own content, which is why we're all here to answer that call to create. And so I want to introduce the rest of our awesome panel. To my left, I have Bernie Sue. And Bernie, yes, please.
Thank you.
Bernie is a multiple Emmy and Streamy award-winning interactive storyteller. He's a creator and a showrunner. He co-created the Lizzie Bennet Diaries, which I'm sure a lot of you have seen, and also Emma Approved, which are on interactive, multi-platform, groundbreaking adaptations of Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice and Emma. And he's also done several other projects. He has co-founded the Canvas Media Studios, which focus on creating scripted franchise series for emerging digital and traditional platforms. So thank you, Bernie, for being here.
Thanks for having me.
And then we have Diarra Kilpatrick. Diarra is also an actor and SAG-AFTRA member and a filmmaker. As you saw, she created the short-form ABC digital series American Coco, which is executive produced by Viola Davis and her company, Juvie Productions. And she took $3,000 of her own money to create the first iteration of that. Is that correct? That's amazing. And she's also recently sold a comedy pilot to Amazon called The Climb, and that's currently in development. So thank you for being here, Diarra. And then we have Vera Miao. And Vera is a writer, producer, actor who found her true passion in directing. And she creates artful stories that reflect the diverse world as it is today and confront contemporary social issues and celebrate her lifelong love and joy for TV and movies, including the horror and sci-fi, which you saw with two-sentence horror stories. Her recent work includes the female-driven apocalyptic road trip feature, Best Friends Forever, and she is the showrunner creator of two-sentence horror stories on Stage 13. And then we have Marvin Lemus. Marvin is an award-winning screenwriter, director, producer who has a passion for telling unapologetic and subversive stories. Most recently, Marvin co-wrote and directed the 2017 Sundance Film Festival series, Gentify, which you saw a little bit of. It's a bilingual digital series produced by and starring America Ferrera. And Marvin's focus on bringing his digital prowess and comedic sensibilities to stories that feature Latina and Latino characters, and has a lifelong dream of erasing the Mexican hat dance song from every post-production house in America, which I fully support. I think that's awesome. And then we have two awesome SAG-AFTRA staff members also rounding out our panel. We have Shaine Griffin, and Shaine is a SAG-AFTRA staff member and LA organizer for the Ads Go Union campaign, an initiative meant to grow union opportunities in the commercial space. And Shaine's focus is on member activation and mobilization, as well as outreach and education in the content creator space. And then lastly, we have Kylie Cristiano, who works in the TV and New Media Department at SAG-AFTRA, and she's previously worked at Paramount and Sony Pictures, where she created digital and traditional marketing for TV shows. And Kylie's current focus at SAG-AFTRA is on high-budget new media productions made for Netflix and Amazon. So thank you all for being here. So to get started, I know you all were not in here for the awesome presentation on unconscious bias, but I'm just curious if we talked a little bit about it in the green room, but I know you all are artists who are actively working to erase a lot of the obvious conscious biases that exist in Hollywood and traditional forms of media. But I'm just wondering, since no one is perfect, if there's anything that comes to mind where maybe while you were creating something that you might have become aware of an unconscious bias that you might have had, whether it was during a casting session or maybe hiring crew or even just someone that you were soliciting advice from, maybe you gravitated towards someone over another, and it's something that you might have been aware of? Anyone can take this.
I'll jump in.
Awesome.
I bummed you all out in that clip for a minute of horror in between really funny, great-looking comedy. I think I'm very personally committed to looking at unconscious bias, particularly in my own work, which means I actually vet my stories through friends for not just for writing excellence and what have you, but to say, are there any unintentional messages in this that I need to really think about? Particularly because I'm working in horror, and so horror generally doesn't have a happy ending. But as a filmmaker, I'm most interested in telling stories that centralize people of color and queer folks, and so to mash that up with genre, there's a certain additional layer, I think. So what does it mean for this person to see an unhappy ending? What does this mean for a person to be a perpetrator of violence or a victim of violence? How are we subverting some of those things because we're being conscious of what we're playing with? So there's a lot of that happening, at least on my end when I'm developing and writing and directing stories.
That's fantastic. I think, it's as a content creator myself, I think it's been really interesting to sort of look at the stories that we all gravitate towards and just see if, maybe what would happen just in terms of our own creativity if we switch the gender, if we switch the race of our lead characters. I think we all tend to want to tell the stories we're all really passionate about, but I think sometimes it can open up some interesting doors if you just force yourself to look at something that maybe isn't your, initial first instinct, so.
There we go. That happened on Coco, because in the first season, the character that I played is like this kind of larger than life, big character, and we wanted in the second season for her to date someone who had just as big of a personality, who was just as angry at the world and about racism. And so at first, my first instinct was like, oh, she'll date like this Black Panther dude. And then I read this article about how Black women and Asian men are the least desirable on dating apps. And I was like, so they should get together. Like, what's the problem? And I started writing for selfish reasons. Like, I want to perform. I want to do this. I want to do that. And that's been one of the surprising benefits is me realizing that I also want to be a champion for kind of just breaking the stereotypes. And so we found this Asian guy, Tim Chu, she said she's friends with who. Yeah. I mean, so sexy. Like, if you're alive, you get Tim Chu. It doesn't matter that he's, Asian. And so for me, I hope that that's really healing, and I hope that seriously, like, I hope that people, will watch this show and then be like, I'm lonely, and there's an Asian dude at the end of the bar. What's up?
What's up? How you doing?
So that was something that happened in real time, and I was able to correct it in the moment and go, I've never seen this before, but I'm gonna write the sexiest, coolest Asian dude, and I'll bet we'll find him. And we did.
I definitely was experiencing that. We wrote, the series has 50 different Latino characters in it. And I was trying my hardest to write something that I literally had never seen before, because I grew up not seeing myself represented and seeing myself only represented as like the reason that we have a slide that says no cartel, no guns, no drugs, because I'm like, that's all I ever fucking saw, and I didn't want to be Mexican growing up. And every step of the way while we were writing, Linda and I would, have to check ourselves, because we realized like there would be times that we would start writing into a stereotype and realize that like, wait, we'd have to take a step back and be like, wait, is this real? And, like, to the point that like, one of our characters is like this homie that like, looks like a thug, like from East LA, but he's an avid bookworm and like loves like Nietzsche, and I was like, wait, is that authentic? And I'm like, why not? And we had to kind of check ourselves every step of the way. And for me, the process of writing this was very much decolonizing my mind into being able to accept that like we are people, because there's so much in my own head that I've painted it, you know, my people, mi gente, into a corner, and having to kind of undo that for myself. So even in the casting, I mean, America Ferrera's role was written for a man. I mean, it was written as a man in the script, and we sent it to her. And I was like, she sounded interested, we sent it. I was like, could you play this role? And you know, I didn't change the pronouns. I was like, just so she could see, like, this was supposed to be a dude. I had somebody in mind, and that's just something that I also love to do. I think it's important to try and look at it and check your privilege as you go through your process. I think is a really important part of the, just as a person, to kind of check your own bias.
I guess I thought of my story after they all went, because I didn't have one in the beginning, but I just realized it just hit me in the face with the clip. So on Emma-approved adaptation of Emma, pretty much when you are adapting Emma, when you think of the Emma character in history, every version of her pretty much has been a blonde woman. And Alicia Silverstone, Gwyneth Paltrow, so forth. And so when we were casting that role, we didn't specifically set out to cast an Asian Emma, or a Hapa Emma as she is, Joanna is. And so we did all races, and we try to do that. And whether or not you say you do all races, it's always like dominantly white, and then everything else is kind of mixed in, which is the system currently. I don't know how to solve that without ignoring or eliminating the Caucasian race from that. So people came in, and we had solid candidates, finalists in all races. We had a black woman, we had an Hispanic woman, and so forth. And we got to our final four, and it was 3 blondes and her, the one we went with, and you still what we went with. And as an Asian person, right, I was trying to not put my bias in here and go, if we go with this Asian woman, am I doing it because of my bias? Because I want her to be Asian? Because now is the chance? Knowing that I didn't set out that way. Her last name is Woodhouse, the character, still. We didn't change her last name. We didn't make her Asian because she's cast Asian. And I actually asked other people, it's like, all right, who do you think is the best person? Like, look at the clips, who are we gonna go with? I asked a cousin of mine who is in the industry, and also I trust her judge of acting talent as well, and she's Asian, of course, she's related to me. I guess not, of course, but she's related to me. And we shared this conversation. It was, are we picking her because she's Asian, or are we picking her because she's the best? And we wanted to make sure we were picking her because she was the best. So it was kind of this bias in our own selves, our own self-judgmental selves. And eventually, we went through it, and we went, she's the best. Everyone else on our team says she's the best. We're going to go with her, and we have never looked back from that decision. But it was one where I look back and I go, that's where a moment hit, where I was like, because I'd grown up this way, and because I've been biased that, all the Emmas are blonde women, shouldn't we just pick a blonde woman and have everybody else be diverse and go the simpler way? And say, well, no, we went with the diverse pick in the lead, not because she was diverse, but because she was the best. And that show did perfectly fine, as you saw. So it all worked out.
That's awesome. I think, what we heard earlier is that, our brains do these little shortcuts, and they most of the time save us time, and they're essential because we do process so much information. But, just being aware of them is, I think, the majority of the battle. And like I said, it can open up to some creativity or some sexiness, which I like that too. So awesome stuff. So I know you have all have a lot of experience creating a lot of content, but I'm just curious if you have any advice to maybe a member here who is maybe a bit overwhelmed with just creating their first project, and that blinking cursor on that white screen just sort of staring you in the face, taunting you. At least that's what it looks like to me. And I know that Vera has found inspiration from a Reddit thread for 2-sentence horror stories, and Bernie from reworking classic stories, and Diarra, it seems like you're inspired by current events and current conversations that are happening. And so I'm just wondering if you can speak about, how you found that spark that launches you into your next project, and where you find your inspirations from.
I'm going first? Dang it. Well, I'm going to say one thing that classic stories are a great place of inspiration. Just want to, even though I'm very much known for my Jane Austen adaptations, I'm not a Jane Austen fan. I'm not saying I don't like her. I'm saying I'm just not, I didn't seek her out as like, this is my muse, I'm going to do her stories. I respect her as an amazing author. She's an amazing author, one of the greatest of all time. But I wasn't a super fan of Jane Austen, so I'm pretty open in where I look at storytelling. But to answer your question, I think inspiration comes from really anywhere, and what I see as, I guess, one of the only non-actors on this panel, I think it's incredibly difficult for what you all do. All the actors, I'm assuming everybody here is an actor. I have such respect for you putting yourselves on screen, putting yourselves in front of the camera, putting like all that is out there. Where I, as a writer, just sit behind it, and no one may know who I am or know my face, but they're gonna see you, and the exposure that is. So I know it's scary, I know it's hard, but you have the power now, and it's all really you deciding whether or not you want to do it or not. It's not, I don't have the camera. You have the camera. It's in front of you on your table. It's a little phone. You can film yourself. You have the creativity. You have the network. You have the social media where you can go like, I need someone to help me do this. Are they out there? You'll probably find them. Whether they're good or not is, who knows. But you'll find them, and then you'll get better, and you'll get better, and you'll get better. So I would just say in general, and I'll say this at the end of the panel too, if I get a chance to say this, I said that every actor out there should be creating something of their own somewhere. It doesn't have to be the biggest thing. It doesn't have to be one of the shows that you saw here, but just something. Just practice. Just do something. Whether if it's stand-up, it's stand-up. If it's a little sketch series on Instagram video, 1 minute apiece, by the way, go for it. Really simple. I don't know if people doing that. Do it. Just try it. And if the character you make doesn't work, try another one. Like, you cycle through. You're not gonna hit the home run character day one. Maybe, I don't know, did you guys do that? Is your character, like the first character you ever made? Just like, bam, A, B, C, D, call me up, let's do it. No?
Yeah.
Oh, never mind, sorry.
No, but what you did say about taking from classic literature, I think is really helpful for actors. Because if you're an actor first, 9 times out of 10, your characters are going to be good and your dialogue is going to be good. Because so many times you've gotten a script and been like, who says this? Who wrote this? What is this? So you know what you want to say and you know how you want to act. But if you do use the plots from classic literature, it will help you get to the end, because you're like, okay, I'm not worried about what happens next. I know 2 lovers from 2 opposing families or communities are gonna fall in love, and then this is gonna happen at this beat, and you can kind of just fill it in with your characters and your point of view. So that would be my advice, because that always seems to be the hardest thing for new writers, is like, what happens next and how do I structure something?
I mean, I very much had this experience with Gentefied. Gentefied is, very much based on current events, things that are happening in Boyle Heights, the gentrification that they're fighting and dealing with, and trying not to become, Silver Lake. And, I was reading about gentrification, and gentrification specifically is like, gente being the root word is people in Spanish, and gentrification is this idea that la gente, there's like, these Mexican-American kids that were born and raised in Boyle Heights go away to college and they come home and they want to open businesses and they want to, make their community better and safer and contribute to their community that they're from, that they were, raised in home. But they're now college educated, they're in a different tax bracket, and the people that are most at risk are still at risk. Like, there's still people being displaced, and it's like this very crazy catch-22. And when I first read about this, I was so attracted to it. I was like, what is this? Like, why am I so attracted to it? And I think that's the thing that I would recommend, is constantly asking yourself, like, why? Why is this, what's this stirring up in me? And I'm sure, like, as actors, I'm sure you have experience with, like, what is this feeling that I'm dealing with? That why is this hitting so close to home for me? What is that? And what I saw in this story of Boyle Heights was my struggle with my identity my entire life, which is the idea that if I can't go home and open a business, without it becoming a problem, then where the fuck do I belong? And that's the question that I've struggled with my entire life. And so I saw it, you know, being from a community like Boyle Heights, I'm from Bakersfield, I'm not from Boyle Heights, you know, I think that gets a little confused sometimes. And, but Bakersfield is Bakersfield. And, you know, and I was dealing with it at the time. When I first learned about this, I had just moved into a very working class neighborhood, very Latino, that's like, you know, I think it's not Pico Union, but it's Western and Melrose area. Very much working class. I was so excited to be there. Like, you know, my neighbors looked like me. It felt like home. It felt like, you know, I'm seeing the elotero come by every day. Like, it was just like, this is the shit. I love this. And then I started seeing shops opening up, these like sliders and Thai spots and these places that I realized I'm like, oh, I'm super excited for. But I realized I was like, that's for me, that's not for my neighbor, you know, the family of 5 living in a, you know, studio apartment next door. And I realized that I was a part of the problem. I was a part of the change that was coming into this neighborhood, and that's why it resonated so deeply with me. And so the series for me was 7 episodes of exploring that conflict of identity of where do I belong, from various points of view, from the immigrants, from the chipsters that were born and raised here, from, you know, the Mexican Americans that were here, that were born and raised here and were part of the walkouts in the 60s. Like, I wanted to explore from all these angles. And so I would really, I mean, boiling it down, the question should always be like, why? Why am I resonating with this? Like, what is it in me? And figuring out what the heart of it is for you so that you can then pull out all the heart. And, you know, this is all very heavy topic, but it's a comedy. Like, you know, we made it a comedy because, like, I also wanted to present Latinos in a very different light that they're not ever shown. They, you know, we are never get to be just funny. Like, we never get to be full people. And so, yeah, sorry. But yeah, going back to that question, figure out what it is. Like, why, when you see something, when it inspires you, dig in deeper. Dig in as hard as you can to figure out why it is something that is close to you.
And I would say, echo what all the other panelists have said. I actually had a completely different career. I was in the social justice nonprofit sector as an activist and made this random, seemingly 180 turn into, at the time, acting was my entry point into storytelling. But for me, it was very clear why I went into it. Besides wanting to be creative, is that my whole life I had been an activist with this sort of, like, for lack of a better way or less corny way of saying it, like, to make another world possible. And I think that moving into storytelling for me was a logical extension because stories were what shaped me most significantly, particularly growing up in a predominantly white neighborhood and feeling really othered and really outsider. Stories, because my parents are immigrants, working class. I was home alone a lot. I read books, I watched television, I watched movies. And I say that because all of us are storytellers, because we are human, and so we need to tell stories to make meaning, and then we also all consume stories. So there's a way in which all of us start there, and we think that it's this really overwhelming and huge and, like, crazy thing to get to do it professionally, and it is, but we all start, I think, with some of the same raw material. And I wanted to, when I started as an actor, I was like, what the fuck is this? Because I had come from, oh, sorry, I don't know if I should have done that. But I'd come from, like, a racial justice background, and then I moved into acting as an actor, and I was like, I have no agency, I have no control, I have no representation, I have no ability to tell stories. I only get to hope that someone else will choose me to tell their story. And that wasn't the relationship ultimately that made sense for me. What Marvin said. I started by trying to write things that I hadn't seen. And I think, like, so the series is just like it's just a representation of who I am and what I care about, right? I love genre. I love all kinds of genre. I told a genre story. I love film. I think it's an art form. So I wanted to practice that. And then I also wanted to centralize people that I can relate to, that I know. It's not hard. Like, I didn't have to, like, make it up or start, like, playing with mathematics. It's just people that I know. And so you get to do all of that. And I would just say, like, yes, start with what you know, start with what you love, but I also think just start. Like, I'm currently trying to write a few things right now, but one in particular, I'm trying to break a feature right now, and I want to kill myself. And I think that, yeah, that sounds right. Yeah. I think it's about starting. And for me, I don't know, everybody's different. For me, it's a combination of forgiving myself for what I call procrastination, because that's also creating. You're not always writing something. You know, if I'm sitting at my computer and about to strangle someone and I choose to watch a movie at that moment, there's a part of me that could judge myself for like not working, but that's also working. That's part of the practice. It's feeding the source. And then on the flip side, making sure that I create structure so that I actually am producing and meeting deadlines and what have you. So one of the things that I did that was a turning point for me is I stopped writing for myself. I stopped writing to make something. I started writing for the joy of it. And I had a writer's group with a couple of good friends, you know, and for me, it was like we self-selected. It was a writer's group of people of color. We all love genre. That was kind of the criteria. And we were an accountability group, and we met every week, and every week we had to bring in 10 new pages. It was not about like rewriting. It was like you could rewrite on your own, but every week you come in with 10 fresh pages. We read them out loud to each other. We gave feedback. We timed the period of time that we had to talk about it. And then we kind of like, you know, broke bread and like talked shit and had a great time. And so the thing was is that changed everything for me, literally. I was like, oh, this is fun. Telling stories is joy. It's not a job, and it's not a means to an end for me. It's just simple pleasure. And that's actually the genesis of what happened. Then I got into a film independent screenwriting lab, and then I got a Tribeca Film Institute filmmakers lab, and then it became rolled into a couple of things going on, and one of which is this 2-sentence horror stories series that was made for Warner Brothers Digital Networks. And so it's like it all came from just stopping trying to create this into a career and coming back to like what was the heart of it, which is the joy of telling stories that matter to me.
I think that's wonderful. I know specifically for myself, being in a film community is pretty much the only reason why I feel like I have an anchor in my week to be creative. I get to meet up with these same people and we push each other, and so I totally hear you. And I think that's actually a good transition, because I'm curious. For me, I know I sort of find my crew, I find my resources, I find my equipment from my community, and I'm just wondering if you could speak a little bit about how you've gone about finding some of your initial, in the earlier days, maybe, you know, some advice about finding investors, finding resources, or finding, you know, how you assembled your crews for some of your earlier projects, and some advice for some people who are, you know, just making that first, even if it is on their iPhone, you know, how to, you know, do they need a giant budget to do it, or if they are making that transition, some advice to someone who maybe is ready to jump into the deeper end.
Yeah, the first iteration of Coco was made for about $3,000. I guess a lot of actors will claim like 4 or 5 on their W-2 so that they don't take that much taxes out. I actually like getting a tax return at the end of the year, because then you have something, you might have a few $1,000s that you can put towards something instead of like nickel and diming it at the Thai place around the corner from him. So if you can get together a few $1,000s, I think what happened was my husband, who was like my partner in crime on making American Coco, his sister was just graduating from AFI. And so she was able to pull together people who had just graduated, who wanted to work on something. And so we were able to make it for really cheap by not paying crew, which is not great. You know, but I think when people are just graduating is the time where you guys have something to offer each other. So my advice would be to check out the AFIs and the LA Film School and all those places, and ask them if they can put you in contact with the fellows, the producing fellows who came out the year before, and then it'd be their job to gather your crew and all that kind of stuff.
Okay, I'll go a couple ways here. So when I started out, I was a voracious networker. Now, to be clear about that, it wasn't that I was being pushy. I was just very active of going to a lot of events and being friendly at the event. So, for example, the way I look at is that if I can't help them, why would they be able to help me? Is why I would look at it. So, sure, yeah, I'm sure I want your help, and yes, I want your help. But if I can't help you, then how is this going to work as a relationship? As good relationships are, it's not one-sided. So if that's not there, then it's just great to meet you, be friendly, put on a smiling face, and be genuine, and like offer to help, sure. And then you build that rapport that way. So it's a personal story, like everybody who's represented me through my career, lawyers, agents, and so forth, managers, I've never solicited. They've always come to me first. And I've kind of just waited for them to come to me. Of course, there were times where I was not represented, and that was scary. Yeah, but eventually they came because I kept going and working and so forth. So that's kind of the attitude that I look at, is that, and kind of a general for life, it's that if you want someone's help, sure, you can ask for it, but the best way to do it is to make sure there's value for them. And if that is paying them, that's a value. If you can't pay them, well, maybe there's some other value that you can provide for them. So there's that. As far as starting one of these series, if you want to try one of these vlog series, maybe not a book adaptation, maybe it is, Lizzie Bennet Diaries as a series, just to clarify, it is a WGA series as well. We were under both contracts day one. We pay health and pension day one, okay? Every actor was paid. There was no like deferred for $100 when we sell it to network. No. They were paid fees day one. That series, because it was so simple to shoot, if you look at it, one camera, locked, one room, 4 actors, we could do a lot of content for very cheap. I'll put it this way. The first 3 months of content, 24 videos, pretty much 24 times 4, 100 minutes of content, probably cost us about 15K. 15K, because it was one room. So it was really simple in that sense. And you think about that, and I just told you, I paid everybody. All the actors got paid, okay? All the writers got paid. All the crew got paid. And we were still able to build that ecosystem in. Now, what did we not pay for? People love to talk about what camera they're shooting on, right? Everyone loves to talk about that. We don't care about the camera. Like, you got a camera? Great, let's use that one. What is it? Don't care. Make it look good. Get it in here. Throw it on a tripod, light it well, make them look pretty, okay? But the camera really doesn't matter, right? So, at least for that show, cameras do matter.
No, they don't.
But in that show,
no, I'm with you.
In that show, the camera doesn't matter. It just has to be good enough. What matters in a show like that series, if you watch it, it's the acting and the writing will carry. And we're putting all our resources of our massive 15K, whether you think it's massive or not, into the acting and writing, unionizing it as well, and creating the ecosystem so it can sustain. So, key element here, those of you who we've all asked for favors, right? All of us here have asked for favors at some point in our life, okay? If I'm doing a short film tomorrow and I ask for favors, I can, not tomorrow, next week, I can probably pull the team together and not pay anybody, ideally not do that, but like, I can probably get those favors done, okay? But I can't do that 3 times over, okay? 4 times over, 5 times over, right? Then it's like, yo, what's happening here, right? So when you build an ecosystem like a Lizzie Bennet Diaries, when you're trying to say like, we're in it for the long game, you have to build a sustainable system. So which is why we built it in day one, that we're paying everybody day one. Yes, it's not a crazy, amazing rate, but we're paying you, so, you know, at least there's that. If you disagree with the payment, then that's fine. You know, that's your right as an individual. But we wanted to create that system so when you're doing a series, you can sustain it. You can keep coming back to it and grow and let it become a series, a potential hit. Let it become something that can run for a year, like both those shows did, and do it that way. So there's my long-winded answer. Sorry.
No, that's 100% true. If you bring people together and say, this is the homie rate, let's do it, you get one time. So you want to make sure that you worked on the script and this is the one ask that you're going to make of people to do that.
I have a slightly different experience. Very much.
Go for it.
My background before Gentefied was doing digital sketch comedy for no money and doing a lot of it. And so I think I've done like almost 200 different videos before Gentefied. I asked for a lot of favors. Definitely my crews started out a little bit bigger as you're asking for favors, because I'm like, yo, work for for freezies this weekend. And then eventually it started to dwindle down, and so I just had to get better at working with less people, like working with a crew of like 3 people or 4 people, because I had to. I'm like directing, I'm booming, I'm acting in the damn thing. Like I'm doing everything in order to make this shit. I'm like, we're writing it like Tuesday, we're shooting it on Saturday, I'm editing it all night and like putting it out the next day. And the thing that I got good at was marketing these things and getting them featured on blogs all the fucking time. And that got me work doing branded stuff. So then I was able to help out the homies. I'm like, yo, I remember that favor. Like I got you a paid gig this time. That was over like 3 years. That kept building up. And so I had a kind of a success rate of my videos always being featured, always getting publicity, always getting a ton of views. On these one-offs, and that was because I, kind of the opposite of you, I treated it like a job. My job was to make sure this shit got as many hits as I could. So we were, just like BuzzFeed, like, we were figuring out what's the topical thing this week, how are we gonna hit it, how do we do it in a way, and I was just practicing. That was, for me, it was just my practice as a director, getting comfortable with the camera, getting comfortable with actors, getting comfortable with the writers, getting to a point where I was so fucking comfortable with it and so confident with it that I could be on set and like be able to wing things, like, and be able to like run with an inspiration, like, and not worry too much. And when you don't have money, like, that's the thing about not having money, is that it actually comes with a lot more freedom. There's just, nobody's gonna get pissed off at you if you don't do it right, you know what I mean? So you get to just do it however the hell you want, and you really get to play, and you really get to like try some shit and follow your gut. So Gentified, when people ask me how we got the money for it, I mean, like, I just gave them the idea. I gave them a deck at Macro, and they were like, yeah, let's do it, and here's your budget, like, go. It was super easy, but that was because I had a relationship and had built relationships where I was able to time after, like, again and again and again, deliver on, like, you need a viral video, like, great, 200,000 hits, 300,000 hits, 1 million hits, like 1.5 million, like, just over and over again. So that when I delivered this thing, I had already, one, you can see it on the page, like, this is finessed to make sure we have all our buzzwords. Like, this is something I'm very passionate about. This is something that I know is gonna be something I've never seen before, but also it's everything that I know how to find this audience. And this fucking web series hasn't even come out. Like, I'm writing the success of the trailer and 2 screenings at Sundance. Like, and it's been like 2 years since I've done it. So I don't know what that means, but it is, I mean, the point to get to that was just making sure I was delivering, and I treated it like a job, but by treating it like a job, I got better at being able to love and enjoy the process. And now I'm at a place where I need to be on set. Like, everything else sucks. Like, I just want to be on set. I don't give a shit. Like, I just want to, when I'm in post, I'm already thinking about, like, I want to get onto the next thing. And I'm in pain when I'm not just getting to shoot and just to make stuff and just enjoy it. Because now I'm at the place where things take a little longer, and I'm like, this sucks. Like, I just want to, like, can I just grab a camera? Like, let's go. Like, because that's the fun of it. Like, that's why I do this. It's because this is fun, because it's showing up and you're playing make-believe with your friends. Like, that's all I want, you know what I mean? And if that, like, yes, I love being able to make money at it now. Like, that's really nice, but I also just, like, I want to just do it. Like, I think that attitude has, I don't know, gotten me here. So that's how I would, I don't know, take from that what you will.
Before I got paid to do this, I had started by making a web series that I just put up personally on YouTube, a comedic web series. And then I made a feature that premiered at Slam Dance. Both were, like the web series, it was just financed by favors. And you just get smart about it. First off, it's all work. Like, none of it is, just like there's no fantasy of like, we're just a bunch of friends. We're gonna like grab an iPhone and we're gonna make something rad and then put it up and everyone's gonna be into it. It's actually a lot of work. And so I like block shot the web series and was like, I need extras for these. So we're gonna do it in one weekend. We're just gonna ask every single friend and we're gonna give them beer at the end of it. And like, in other words, it's like to recognize and respect their time and how we treat them, even though they're not getting paid. So it's like, it's not work in the sense that no one's getting paid, but you treat it like work. Like, you look at the ways in which well-run sets are run, and you take those practices to the best of your ability on your like DIY friends kind of situation. The thing about LA that's amazing is that everybody has something to bring and some sort of experience, and initially I had like a friend who was a commercial production manager, and so like the camera house and the lighting, like the G&E was donated by companies because they want her to send her commercial jobs their way. And I actually had to be like, I don't want that equipment. It's too expensive. We are not insured. I can't. And then I got insurance from like a shady friend connection. So like, you do that, right? And then the same with the feature, we found private financiers. Some were friends and family. Some were literally just, people that we kind of knew and someone referenced. And then we did a Kickstarter and raised like $80,000. And then that brought more financiers. And so you just do it, but I do think that I think the degree to which, for all of you who've been on sets, and you've probably, many of you have already produced your own stuff, you take those lessons, you roll into the next project, you treat everyone with respect, you approach it as a professional set, even if there's no money flowing.
Oh, 100%. You have to. Like, the only reason that you can get, like, I would get favors over and over again was, like, one, I was like, we're going to be done in 6 hours. I'm cranking through this shit. You're going to go home early, and I'm taking care of you on the next one. Yep. And I'm treating them like, I'm like, thank God you're here. Like, I appreciate everything. Like, I appreciate your time. Like, are you comfortable? You guys, please take care of your crafty table. I don't want to see fucking pretzels anymore. Like, get some good shit. Like, get some food on there. Like, that's where you should spend your money, is on your crafty. Because when you show up to set and you see that crafty table is popping, you're like, this fool cares about me. Like, that's important. That's important. So please, that's one thing. That's one tip that I have. No more fucking Doritos. Like, you guys, like, get
Healthy
some fucking
shit,
veggie platters. Get some fruit. Like, yes, hot stuff. Have somebody come and just be like, yo, bring your toaster oven and make us like Tostitos all day. Like, whatever. It's important, and that shit goes a long way.
It is. It does.
I think actually, speaking of, Marvin, you were talking a little bit about branded content, and I think this is actually a great time for Shaine maybe to speak a little bit about who's in the commercials department, and she's very passionate about supporting the next gen of content creators as well. So I was just wondering if you could speak a little bit about SAG-AFTRA's involvement with branded content and sort of a little bit how that works in the digital space.
Yeah. Can you guys hear me? Yes. First of all, this is a kick-ass panel. Yeah. I'm like loving this. Can we give them a round of applause? Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, so before I launch into that, what I love so much about the internet is it is the great equalizer, right? Because all of a sudden you have the power to create in a way that you didn't before as performers. And advertisers see this. They are getting very wise to the fact that there's a huge audience online that performers are able to reach in a very authentic way. And how many of you own a TV? Okay, wow, a lot, considering. Okay, well, there's the thing called cord cutters, right? And advertisers are having to look more towards the next generation of their audience, right? So Gen Z, millennials don't traditionally have televisions or don't consume their media on televisions. So they're consuming on YouTube a lot, right, in these digital platforms. And so advertisers are migrating. Now, traditionally, commercials have been an amazing payday for performers to then finance their auditions to TV theatrical, right? Because you make $40,000 on a commercial, that'll sustain you to go on your auditions. And in the digital space, we're seeing less money, but a lot of work going there. So we're really committed to bridging that gap as a union, making sure that you're all getting compensated fairly. So what we're seeing is that as performers put their content on the internet, advertisers are reaching out, and they're paying anywhere from a product trade to 7 figures, right, to endorse their product. And what we want to do is create a standard, just like we have in the broadcast space, where there's a standard of pay. So did I answer your question, or did I just go crazy?
No, I think no, you did.
Okay.
It's a very complicated space, so I think there's not a simple answer, essentially, is what I'm hearing.
I have a counter question to this when you're done with this question.
Please, go for it.
I'll just go for it now.
Yeah. Let's make it a conversation.
Sure, okay, sure. So This is from the actor side. So two of the actors that worked on my shows, Emma and Lizzie, after a show like that, Emmy, when you as an actor are trying to ride that momentum, of course, and you as a creator should go for it, rise up, go crazy, and it's not always easy, of course. Big casts, who knows who breaks out, right? So two of the actors have successfully gone to a sustainable level of living by doing two alternative things which are similar. One has basically become a Patreon creator, creating her own stuff. Soliciting, getting the fans to become patrons of her. Now, a lot of those.
Everyone know what Patreon is?
It's kind of a Kickstarter with subscription-based Kickstarter. And if I'm a patron of you, I pay $10 a month, and I get some type of value. You write a letter to me every month, and I get to see your private Instagram, not solicited, not. It's not porn, all right? Well, I guess it can be. It's up to you. Your free choice, okay? But they're not. For these two, they're not. It's just trying to create extra value. And it's a different system. It's kind of the freemium model system, which is a whole other discussion we won't talk about. But it's working for them. These two creators are sustaining. One's doing Patreon, the other's doing Twitch as a Twitch streamer. So Twitch is a live streaming platform, twitch.tv. And she voices a video game in a very popular game called Life is Strange, not the main character. And she's kind of leveraged that into a Twitch stream where she plays her game, of course, and other games. And now she has enough Twitch patrons, we'll call it, that are subscribing to her at a $5 a month clip, right? You go like, well, who's going to do that? It's not about you personally. It's about them. It's about like she's convincing enough people to put in $5 a month to sustain. And I look at that and I'm like, that's really interesting because they're sustaining now not from doing one $50,000 commercial, right? But they're doing it by leveraging the audiences potentially that my shows gave them. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't. And then now turning it into a sustainable revenue stream for themselves. So then my counter question to you about the commercial system is that these creators now have their own audience, okay? They're creating their own content and they're technically performing every month, every week, every day or so. Whether it's them just saying, hey, I'm going to my audition and just live streaming it, or they're playing a character in a sketch, right? So then on top of that, you're saying the commercial, like Gatorade comes in and says, all right, when you're playing Call of Duty, the only thing you're drinking is fucking Gatorade. Sorry, I swore, but Gatorade. And you're trying to create an ecosystem for that level, okay? So then I think about that, and as someone who has studied the internet as much as I have, I go like, what? How? How are you gonna do that? Like every platform's different, every value is different. A viewer on Twitch coming in at a $5 per month subscription has a much higher value than a random click on YouTube through a link from Twitter. So I really want to know where you're looking at for that.
Yes.
Selfishly.
And I will do my best to answer that. So I think you're speaking to the power of influence, right?
Yes.
And
SAG's role in the power of influence.
Right. And I think we're still trying to figure that out. Now, the whole world of branded content, and you can speak to this as well, is very messy, right? And so what constitutes a commercial and what constitute branded content, right? Because SAG's role is different depending. But what is exciting about this world is that influencers have more power in the advertising space than a traditional performer, right? Because all of a sudden, the brand is relying on the influencer to tell their story and to tell their brand to their audience in a way that they really have very little power. And so the ability of this community to set a higher standard is so incredible because they have more power than ever before. And I think if we can harness that, and a lot of influencers are members, and a lot of influencers want to be members, right? So how do we unite? And how do we create a system where when I'm not going to say a company's name, but company X says, hey, I want to reach your 1 million followers. I'm going to pay you $2,000. We say, you know what? That's not the value proposition of that trade, right? So I think it really comes down to all of us determining what is appropriate in this space, and we're figuring that out. But it's a brave new world. It is.
I wish you the best of luck. I mean, completely sincerely, because I had no idea SAG was trying to play in this world, and I commend you for it. But wow.
Yeah.
And it's needed. I mean, there's too many digital companies that want to stay non-union because they are just screwing a lot of people over and just abusing a lot of people's time and power. Like it's necessary. That's all I'm saying. So I support you guys 100% because I've been a part of that for too long.
We have questions in just a minute. We're gonna do a Q&A. But right before we get that, if there was maybe one suggestion either of a tool, an app, a resource of something that maybe, and Kylie, maybe if you can speak something on the paperwork side that is just essential for a member to know before, during the pre-production process that you found really useful, that you could recommend, just like a brief little, it could even be a camera that you really like. It doesn't have to be, but just something that is low cost or cost saving to members that they should know about, if anything comes to mind.
I'm not going first. Go ahead.
By the way, I did leave some info sheets out. They're just a little 4-page thing about signing to new media. And as we always like to tell people, just reach out to us. We're happy to answer all of your questions. And speaking to what Shaine was saying about brand and content, sometimes the line is so thin, we literally have to vet between commercials and new media all the time. And we do have a lot of people calling. I had somebody calling the other day and said, well, my friend's an influencer and this X brand wants her to do this. Does it need to be covered? And I said, yes, absolutely. If you're telling me the product is actually on the page, and of course this company didn't want to, sign to an agreement. So any questions like that, or you have somebody who wants you to promote X product, just check in with us because we are trying to figure it out. And the more that we hear about these scenarios, the more we can discuss it and figure out those terms and conditions.
I can offer one. Movie slate. So if you have an iPad or a tablet, you can download a slate right to your tablet, and you don't have to rent one or buy one. Really easy, downloadable version.
That's what we use in our shows. Well, as the platform person, I'm going to say, I really encourage you all, individuals, to look at all the social platforms out there. Now, doesn't mean you should be on all of them. Doesn't mean you be on all of them. I actually encourage you to look alternatively. I know alternative is not a very popular word these days, but using the word alternative. And what is an alternative platform? You may think that Instagram and Snapchat and Facebook are alternative platforms. Those are not alternative platforms. Those are mainstream platforms. That's wherever it is now. Look at places that are serving a niche. Twitch, as I mentioned, good place to start if you're a gamer, especially. Right? If you love video games, okay. Another one, Musical.ly. If you love lip-syncing the music, who doesn't love lip-syncing music? If you can build your audience there, awesome. I know they're coming out every day, different platforms, different communities, but it's a good place to, 1, practice your content, 2, build an audience, right? And 3, just play around and see what else is out there as far as new spaces go.
I mean, this is not an app or anything.
It can be even a crafty recommendation.
Yeah, it's not a crafty recommendation. I just think it's this is all intimidating. If I were sitting here and I were just an actor and I was listening to I would be so intimidated. Here's the thing, just get it done. That was the number one thing, was telling myself this doesn't even have to be good. I just have to get it done. And I promise you, your life will change. I don't know anybody who's been I want to make something and I don't know how. And then they got to the other side of that and there's been some kind of reward. It's not necessarily, it got bought by, whatever, but you get an opportunity, you get a job, you meet the person that cast you in the thing that sets off your life, whatever it is. Just get it done and don't worry about it being perfect.
I will say, just to on a different tact, if you are interested in practicing your craft, I didn't go to film school. My women's studies degree probably didn't translate so well into being a director and a writer. But LA is an amazing free film school. There are so many resources, and I am constantly taking advantage of them. So obviously lectures, artist talks, Q&As, all of those things. There's an amazing podcast if you're a writer called Q&A with Jeff Goldsmith. And the episodes are amazing sort of deep dives into a particular filmmaker, writer, director on a particular film, their process, what their writing process looks like, what are their writing habits, what was the experience like directing. There's amazing websites like No Film School and Film School Rejects. There's all these incredible video essays that really break down the craft of directing and storytelling if you want to be there. If you've never seen the video essay series, Every Frame a Painting, it's the best. It's like, you just nerd out. I have to watch them several times because the first time around I'm just entranced. And they're video essays breaking down different directors' work and sort of details about how they. So it's like that, right? Like I go to a talk, a lecture, a Q&A every week, at least a couple of times. It's LA. You can go to the ArcLight and go to a screening and sit down and listen to Darren Aronofsky. Well, we're not going to talk about Mother. I don't like that, but so you get the chance to do that, and I really highly encourage for those of folks who want to these are great ways to break down what can sometimes seem like I got to go get a master's at film school to be able to understand the craft. Like I want to do this. I don't want to just throw something up. I want to do it with care. I want to be thoughtful about it. I want to understand some of there's so much out there, and I could think of more afterwards of folks like of other free spaces that are just incredible people talking about their process. It's just really helpful.
With that, there's I'm trying to remember the name. Every lesson a screenplay, or every screenplay a lesson, or something. That's another.
Lessons from a screenplay.
What's it called?
Lessons from a screenplay.
Lessons from a screenplay. It's amazing. I mean, it's very much feature focused, but it's still incredible. That guy such an incredible breakdown of different movies and comparing different structures. I love it. That's what I'm binging when I'm in the bathroom. Basically.
We actually as a fan and a patron, by the way, of that essay. We called the creator Michael Tucker in for a meeting, and we would have been geeking out. It's like, oh, you're from Lessons from the Screenplay. It's like we wanted to see what he wanted to do as far as creative and so forth. So it's that
guy's amazing.
Audience building. I was going to say, you said podcast. Look at podcasts. Podcasts are much cheaper to make than short films, and you get to perform. So
you cover podcasts,
and cover podcasts.
We have a special podcast agreement now.
Awesome, but I've definitely looked in that space as well. I know that the scripted podcast world marketplace is the best it's ever been. Right now, podcasts have been since the beginning of the iPod, 2001. But today, the scripted podcast world is the strongest it's ever been.
And I will say, to that point, if you look at CPM of YouTube versus podcasts right now, it's $1.50 for YouTube versus $43 for a podcast. So that is a very lucrative place to be. Can I just jump in with this for a resource? Your union. Yay. So, we want to be a resource for you all in events like this. And if you have other ideas about what you want from your union, let us know.
Thank you so much to all of our panelists, Bernie, Diarra, Veera, Marvin, Shaine, and Kylie. Thank you so much.